Mohit, you are live. You can start.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discuss on the unit testing, which is a very crucial part when it comes to write down the code. And for a reference, we'll be taking a JavaScript tools and a JavaScript code to dive deeper into a few of the unit testing concepts. But the concepts we are going to look today will be pretty much common and can be applied to any language or any framework, irrespective of whichever language you are coding in. So let's look up into the outline we have set for today. First of all, I will give you a brief introduction to what is unit testing. Might be many of you are already familiar with these terms and all the concepts, but still who are new to this concept, we will quickly run through it. What are the benefits, what are the drawbacks of the unit testing, and where does it fits among the other testing uh, tools that we have. Then we will look up into a few of the JavaScript tools that we have for unit testing. And we will prominently look into the two tools today. One of them is the Karma, and the second one will be Jasmine. We will look into these tools in more depth, and we'll learn more about it. Then we will go through few of the code, where we will see all of the different testing concepts. What are the like setup, tear down methods? What are the test doubles? And all of the other stuff. And then we will quickly go through the code coverage, how we can calculate the code coverage for our test cases. And at the end, we will quickly go through the best practices that we must follow while writing unit tests. About myself, I am Mohit Khandelwal. I work as a software developer at Infosys, and I mostly works around web technologies inside as a full stack developer. So let's get started. So when we talk about unit test, we in unit test we test the smallest individual part of our code, keeping it in isolation. We don't care about the whole application or complete module. Rather, we just care about a single and a simple bunch of our code. It could be like a method, it could be a simple function, and this is mostly done by the developers in order to test like whether what they are intended, what the code is intended to do, is it happening or not. So if you look here in the testing pyramid, unit test comes at the most bottom. They are the most fundamental test. Above them we have integration tests where we test whether two modules are working fine when they are together. And then on the top we have end-to-end test where we test the complete application together to test whether our application is working as expected or not. So these are a few of the basic overview we had about unit testings. There are other types of testings as well, regression testings, A/B testings. Those are the different things. But when it comes to unit test, we just test the smallest individual part of our code. So before moving further, let's quickly look through what are the benefits, what are the advantages of the unit test. And also we will look through what are the few drawbacks when it comes to unit test. So the best thing about unit tests, they are quite lightweight and they are very fast as compared to other types of tests. The unit tests are really fast. Secondly, they catches the bugs in the very early stage of development. You don't have to wait like to have a complete application ready and then you will be able to identify. Even with the simple module, simple function, you can identify what is going wrong. And it is also very easier to debug the bugs identified by the unit test. It also helps you to refactor your code, or maybe if you're changing an existing code, or maybe if you're working on a legacy code, it gives a lots of confidence to you while you're working on such a piece of a code. Another good advantage that we have with unit test, it acts like a live documentation. Since you can see what are the expected output, what the function, what the module is intended to do. So it also helps us as a kind of a documentation for a piece of a code. So despite having so many advantages, there are still some drawbacks. So as you can feel, unit test cannot identify all of your bugs. it can catch lots of bugs, but it will not catch every error inside your program. And that's why we have a different and another kinds of testing environment. And second prominent thing with unit test is they takes time and also an effort, because along with your code you will also need to write a unit test. There's like the double work you need to do. But believe me, it's totally worth it. It has certain drawbacks, but it's totally worth it over the time. So if we talk about the tools for unit testing, we need a different kinds of tools for over here, and we have a lots of options available. If we look around for the testing framework, we need a testing framework to arrange our test suites in a readable and a very scalable manner. And we have a multiple option: Mocha, Jasmine, Jest, a few of the very prominent ones. Similarly, for assertions, we need certain library. We need to test our whether our actual code run as the expected output, give us the expected output. So we have an assertions library. Also, we have very so many options over here: Chai, Jasmine, Zest. And for the test runners, so to run our test cases in an automated way, and also to get its output in a multiple formats, we have a various test runner, Karma being one of the most popular one. And in the end, to get the coverage report, like to know how our test case executed, how well they have functioned, we have a certain coverage report tools. So we have so many options over here. We can go with the Jest as well. Another popular combination is Mocha plus Chai plus Xenon. Mocha acts as a testing framework, a Chai for assertion, and Xenon for making spice. But we will, for this demonstration, we will going with Jasmine and Karma. The reason I will tell you when we will proceed through the slides, like why we have preferred those tools. But you can took any of this framework, any of the tools as per your choice, and the concepts, the fundamental concepts of unit testing remains pretty much similar to them. So they won't affect much over here. So first of all, let's talk about Karma. So Karma is a test runner tool. What it does, it takes your source code and it runs it. It starts a web server. It runs your source code, your JavaScript code against the test cases that you have, and then it identifies whether your test cases are passing, what all are failings, and gives the output in a summarized manner. The best thing about Karma is it is very flexible tool. It can work with any framework. You can have multiple frameworks to work around with it. It can give output, the test result, into various formats. So you can integrate well in whatever format you want it to get. Also, it has some other features as well, like it can check the files in the background, and if they are changing, it will automatically run your test case. It really helps when you're developing a code to have this automation around in background. Another good thing about Karma is it can execute your test on a multiple browsers and also on a multiple devices. So it is not a browser restricted. As we will look through, it has a support for many browsers. And another good thing about Karma is its integration with continuous integration pipelines. So it really integrates really well with the Jenkins, Travis, and other tools that we already have. And next, let's say look up through the Jasmine. So Jasmine is the second tool that we have over here. We will be using it's a framework to test a JavaScript code. The good thing about Jasmine, it provides everything. It provides a test structure to arrange your code. It has an assertions library, assertion functions using which you can make assertions. It also provides testables using which you can spy, mock your dependencies, and pretty much everything else out of the box to test your code. So that's the reason Jasmine is preferred over here. It has almost all of the features that we need for the unit testing. The good thing about Jasmine is it's very clean and obvious syntax. When you will go through the Jasmine code, it seems like you are just reading a kind of English word. You are just reading a text. It's really easy to read its code. It has a good community support as well. And one more prominent reason is it is the recommended testing framework for the Angular application. Angular, the one of the most popular JavaScript framework we used for front-end development. So this is the reason. But as I told earlier, we can use any framework, any tool. These are just of the two tools I'm using today. But you are open to choose any other tools that you want. All of them has certain pros, certain cons. They fit certainly well into some of the application. So let's look up with the code examples. So first of all, we'll go through the installation process, like how we can install the Karma and the Jasmine. So for this, I will have here I have my package.json, which has certain dependencies, Jasmine, Karma CLI, or to run the Karma commands from the CLI, and some other external plugins, Karma coverage to get the coverage report, Chrome launcher to run Karma inside Chrome, and the HTML reporter to get reports into HTML format. So Jasmine and Karma are obviously provides a lots of things, but there are also additional plugins that you can get, and here that we have. So first of all, you need to install those things from npm, the Node Package Manager. It will install all of the stuff that you will need to run your test cases. So we had all our packages installed. Next thing what we need to do is to initialize the Karma configuration file. So Karma needs to know like how is our source code is arranged. It needs to identify how it should display its result, and also in which browser does it need to run a test case. So the simplest way is to run this command karma init. It will get you a default configuration file. It will ask you a few of the questions, and then it will generate a configurations file. So first of all, it is asking which framework do we want to use. It has Jasmine as an option. It can use Mocha, Quint, Node Unit, NUnit. So we'll go with the Jasmine as of now. It will ask some other question, which browser do we want to use. It has a support for Chrome, Chrome Headless, Chrome Canary, Firefox, Safari, Phantom, Opera, even Internet Explorer as well. So for as of now, I will leave it empty. We'll be using Chromium. It's asking for the location of my source file and the test files. And yeah, it has generated a Karma configuration file for me. If we look through it, this file is generated Karma configuration with some of the few of the default configuration. It has specified frameworks as Jasmine. Another important parameters that we set here is the files, where we specify what all are the source code files and where are the test cases files. Pre-processors, which will look later when we go to the coverage part, and the reporters, how we want it to be reported, our test results, and few of the other settings that we have around over here. So I will make little changes over here. First of all, I will add a browser, and I will be using as a Chromium. I'm using Chromium, so I will be mentioning Chromium. Next thing I need to write is client, set client, because it will remove the result as soon as it completes. So I don't want it to remove it. So I will make it false. And next up, I need to specify what all are my source code files. So they are inside the source folder. You can always give a patterns over here. And next I need to tell you about the test cases file that I have. They are inside the test folder. So it pretty much our configuration for Karma is ready. So let's quickly look through the code example that we have today for code examples that we have today. We have I have a simple to-do class which has a task list as a parameters, and it does two things. It add a task to this task list, and it can also delete a task from this task list. A pretty simple code we will look through to understand all the concepts around the unit testing that you have. And If we look around for the spec file, here I have inside my test folder a spec file todo.spec.js. So here I have written a test cases for it. Let's quickly go through this code to understand what does it means. So first of all, using describe, I have defined as a test suite. So test suite is basically a combination of different test specs, different test cases. So Jasmine arranges your code as a test suite, and then inside it we have a test specs. And inside a test spec, we will be making actual assertions, actual test performance we'll be doing over here. So if you look around with the first test case we have, so we describe it using a it keyword. Then we have a description. Be careful whenever you write a description, be as accurate as you are, because it will help you a lot later on to debug and to identify what your test is supposed to do. And then we have a callback function inside which I'm writing a test case. For writing a test case, this is like a general pattern I used to follow that you can also follow. That is arrange, act, and assert. So in the arrange part, we are just making all those arrangements, the variable declaration, the object initialization, all those things are done. So here I am just initializing the object of my to-do class and just declared a new variable for a task. Next up, we have a act where we call the actual functions. So here I'm calling the actual function like to do inside my to do object, add task, and I'm adding a task. And after arrangement and after action, at the end we will perform the assertions. So in assertions, we check whether our expected output we got an expected output or not from our actual code. So for the assertions, we use this syntax in Jasmine. We make an expectation. And there are different assertion functions. I'm just over here, I'm just checking that after this add task function has executed, the length of my task list should be 1. And next thing I'm asserting that it should contain the task. So these are the two assertions I'm making to test my add task function. Similarly, I have a test code for delete task, which should remove a task from a task list. I am creating a new object for to do. I have created a simple task list over here, and I'm just deleting a task. And here I'm making an assertion that it should now not contain task 2 over here. So this is the way we write a test suite in a Jasmine. And so let's quickly recap again. So Jasmine provided test structure in a format of a suite and a spec. So as a suite, it will be combination of multiple spec. It has a described function. And inside a spec, we actually write a test case and we check whether our expectations are met or not. And they are defined using this it functions. And we use assertion functions to make assertion, and we actually compare whether our actual output and the expected outputs are similar or not. So we had a different assertion functions in Jasmine. So if let's say we have a Boolean value and we want to make assertions on Boolean value, we have a to be truthy, to be falsy assertion function. Even if we want to check whether our code is raising a correct error or not, we can have a to throw functions. And we have other assertion function as in when required. So let's run our test cases and let's see how Karma and Jasmine reports the test results. So to run, we have a command. To do this is a karma start. Using a karma start command, we can run our test case. So there is certainly an error. So here I have run a karma start command, and as soon as I run the command, a Chromium window will pops up and it will give me the test result outputs. It's not showing. Obviously, we had certain need to things to change. So as you can see, as soon as I run the command, its test cases are running. There are certain some other test cases also there. So it has executed 5 of them, and as of now, all of them have passed. It will also show the output in a Chromium browser. It's not showing. We made some mistake in a Karma configuration. So as you can see, we have 5 test cases, and it's all of them have succeeded as of now. If we look further, let's look up how we can have a failing test case and how we can debug in case of if our test cases are failing. So if I make a simple change in my delete task over here, let's say by mistake or by some reason I changed the splice to a slice function. So we make this small change, and as expected, it should delete task will not work now. And let's see how our test cases reports it. And as soon as we make this change, here in the command line, we have this one test case failing. It should remove task, but it failed. And it also gives detailed description, like what is the expected value, but what did we get, and also at the which point of the line we are getting this error. So in this way, if we have any test case failing, Karma Jasmine reports it up with an exact description, like what it is expected to do and where does it fail. So you can just go through it and debug your code with confidence, and it's very easy and quickly to identify the bugs that are. I will again change this slice function to splice, and we'll save it. And now all my test cases are passing as of now. So all of my test cases are now succeeding. So next thing, if we look around in our test spec, if we see, we are initializing this our to-do class. We are creating an object of a to-do class in both the test cases. So at many times we have such functionality where we need to do a repetitive task, and it is against the dry principle, do not repeat yourself. So is there a way we can avoid this duplication of code which we need to do in almost all of the test cases. So yes, there is a way, and those are the setup and tear down methods. So these are the methods we usually use to do the common initialization, setup, or code finalization things in a code. So we have these methods before all, before each, and after all, which runs either before all the test cases or runs before every test case that we have. So these are the various setup and tear down methods that we have. I can show you with an example of what are the order of executions that they have. So I have another spec file to describe that order. We have a before all function, before each, and three of the test spec. And at the end, we have this after each and after all functions to make the clear. So if we look at the example, so the order in it which it runs is we it runs before all and after all only once before all the test suite to do the setup common for all the test suite. Then it runs each of the test spec, and before every test spec and after every test spec it runs the initialization code we have in before each and after each. So this is the way we have our test this setup methods and the tear down method works. So if you have any common code, common setup things you need to do, you can write them down inside this methods and use this methods. So likewise, we have in our example test case, we have this repetitive code. We are using to do object twice. We are initializing it twice, so we can put it inside our before each function. So similarly, if you have any kind of setup things, you can do them inside before each, before all. And similarly, if you have any clearance methods, you can do them inside after each and after all. So it run as expected again. So these are other setup and tear down methods. And similarly for other unit testing frameworks, we have a similar kinds of methods which you can check on. Now let's discuss about one more issues that we usually follow and you will be doing usually. Since we're doing unit testing, we want to test only specific part of our code and not the rest of the code that we have. And sometimes we are calling a library functions, or maybe we are using a third party or an external functions. So how to deal with those things? We actually don't want to use them. And many times we keep using HTTP call to your backend and getting a response from there. But obviously you can't hit a backend again and again for this for running our test cases. So for all those reasons, we have a testable. Let's understand. First of all, let's see an example. Let's say I have this one more call window.confirm inside my add task function. I have this window.confirm. So what issue it will create is, yeah, so whenever I will run the test case, it will block the test case until I don't perform any actions, either I cancel or okay. It will not execute my test cases, they are still pending. So it could be an issue if we see, it could have an issue around us. So to deal with such kinds of things, we have test doubles. So they are the pretended object that we replace the real object for the testing purpose. Usually they are used to eliminate all the dependencies that a function has. So we just test a particular, we just be focused and be as isolated test as we can have. And you can think test double as the body doubles that we have in movies. So in place of an actual actor, we have those stuntmen who perform the stunt for the actors. So similarly, we have a test doubles, and in the Jasmine, these test doubles are called spies. So you can easily create them. Let's say here I have window.confirm. So it's pretty easy to create this test double. We just need to use spy on window, and on a confirm method, I need to spy upon. Even so, as soon as you do, this will get silent, and even it will not show any confirm message, any such pop-up, and our test case will run as usually. And not even this, you can also make assertions on top of this window confirm. So you can also make assertions on our spy functions. And I'm just checking that this window.confirm should have been called and making an assertions on top of it. You can also track back to arguments. You can also return a fake response. You can also have a dummy functions in place of any other functions if you're using. And if you're making HTTP call, you can send a fake response. So these are the certainly very useful things you will be using a lot when you're writing test cases. So this is the next thing I wanted to cover. Now let's look around the test code coverage thing, because as we keep writing a unit test, a few questions strikes to us, like are my unit tests sufficient? Do I need to write more unit tests? If all my methods are covered, is all the code path is covered? So code coverage is an answer to all such questions. It's a metric which helps you understand which are part of your code is executed by test suites, and it also help you assess the quality of your test suite, like how well they have functioned. So, but it should not be the only parameter. You should keep other factors also in mind, but it can be really helpful in most of this stuff. So to have this code coverage active, we already had this plugin installed, Karma Coverage. It uses Istanbul tool to generate the coverage report, and we just need to make certain configuration changes inside our Karma. First of all, we need to mention the pre-processes. So how this coverage actually works is they will have a line counter to each of the source code, and they will just count whether this line is hit or not. So I'm using coverage, and I also forgot to mention this Karma Jasmine HTML reporter. That's why I was not getting reports. So this will generate the coverage report, and next I need to do one more configuration. I need to tell coverage report and should be generated in which format and with path coverage reporter. I wanted to generate it in an HTML format and in the directory coverage. So I had my configuration in place. We will again run our test cases. So if your test cases have successfully run, as you can see over here, if your test cases are running successfully, Karma coverage plugin will generate the coverage report inside a coverage folder. So let's look through it. So it has created this new folder coverage. It has specified the browsers, and inside this we have a coverage report. Yeah. So here we can see all our test cases are passing. We have 100% coverage. Obviously, we have a very small function, so we get covered everything. Let's see if we don't have a sufficient coverage. How does it shows in such case? So I will disable one of this test spec. So there is a shortcut function X you can use before any suite or spec to disable it. So I'm using X, that is for the excluded test spec. And it will have regenerated the coverage report. So as you can see now the result has changed a bit. Now we just have a 75% statement coverage, 100% branch coverage, or two of the three functions have been covered. If you look around, which all part is not covered. So as you can see over here, this particular part of our code is not covered, shown over here in a red color. So using this, you can identify which all part of your code is not covered or which branch of your code is not covered, and you can write test cases accordingly. But if you're a beginner and just starting, don't worry much about the code coverage, because it should not be the only parameter. Rather write code in such a manner that it covers most of the errors, as much as error is possible. So that's we have a code coverage over here. Next up, let's look into few of the best practices that you must be following whenever you are writing a unit test. This is applicable to any framework, any language you are writing. Always prefer to write unit test along with your code. Don't wait to complete all of the code and then write the unit test. This is not how it is done. Even if you look for the test driven development, which is a famous methodology that we have, it's even suggests to write test before you write your code. So prefer to write unit test along with your code, otherwise it will get too messy for you to manage things up. Secondly, have a very clear description of your test case, like what it is exactly supposed to do, what functionality is it trying to do. So because of this description, it will become easy for you to debug your test cases if they are failing later on. Also keep in mind, in a unit test, we test a very specific single unit. So make your test spec in, there should not be interdependency. They should test only specific single unit. They should not depend on each other. Also try avoid to make too many assertions, like two or three assertions are good enough, because if there are too many assertions, you cannot identify which assertion is failing or what is going wrong. It becomes little difficult to identify those things. And nesting all of the external dependencies that you have, if you have a library functions, if you have any HTTP calls, if you have any external functions, try to mock them, use testable for those things, and try to mock them or either stub them. So in such a way that test, because we wanted to test in isolation. So keep these things in mind whenever you writing your unit test. So such that your unit test will be much better, and that will certainly help you to identify your bugs. So that's all I wanted to cover today. As we quickly recap through, we have seen the basics of the unit test, the fundamentals of unit test. Then we look around what all are the frameworks and the tools available to us. There are so many tools available. You can use Mocha, Achai, Sinon. You can also use Jest. Uh, and for this demonstration purpose, we look around over the Karma and Jasmine few of the most popular one and also the recommended one that comes for the Angular. The latest version of Angular has all these setups already done for you. So we look for the Karma and Jasmine. We look around few of the examples. We talk about how you can structure your code, how you can make assertions, and then we talk about setup and test and network testables. So thank you for joining us. Let's. You have posted lots of queries. I could not check it out. So let's we quickly go through it one by one that you have posted. So Omkar has suggested that the Jasmine is outdated and go for Jest. So I accept your recommendation. Jest is another very good testing framework we have, and it also has a lots of features. You can choose any of the frameworks as I told earlier for a testing. Jasmine is just we took for an example since it's easy to get started, and also it's a recommended way for the Angular. But you are open to use any of those unit testing frameworks we have, and because the concepts remains pretty much similar. uh, the Arjit has asked, can SonarQube be used for coverage reports? So yes, you can use SonarQube as well. Over here we have used Istanbul, but there are other so many options available. So yes, you can use SonarQube as well. So Vijay has suggested that just also provide code coverage report. Like I'm not aware about it, but if it is, yes, it's a very good thing if we have code coverage along with yourself. And Likhit has asked, how do we mock a functionality? So Likhit, to mock a functionality, you can use test double that we have covered. Jasmine provides spice to do this. So you can using testables and spice, you can mock any other functionalities than any other external dependencies that you have. Ojas has asked, is there any way to unit test the platform events like platform, resume, or ready in Ionic? So Ojas, I'm not sure about Ionic, but I have worked on Angular. So yeah, you can test such platform events as well. Even for Angular, we have this. We can check about the events. We can test event triggering and all those things as well. So I think for Ionic, we might be having similar functionalities. So that's all we have. So there's another question. How do we test a function that makes async get call? Likhit has asked this question. So yeah, Jasmine has an option to test asynchronous functions as well. I cannot cover it in this presentation. It will get too deeper. Maybe we can discuss offline about these things, Likhit. And right, so the presentation will be available over here at the link. You can go through the presentation and the video will also be available. So today we have just covered the basic concepts to get you started, and so anyone who is just beginning with the test unit test, or even if someone who is confident with the unit test, I hope you have learned something today and you have gained something new today. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful session. Thank you.